I said, no, we're going to make this so awesome that when they see it, they're going to get Firefox approved. How would you describe the difference between government and industry work? My assumption is government requires preciseness and industry requires creating lots of features. So I didn't work for the government. I worked for a company that sold a product to the government. I did go to government meetings. I had to get it wasn't a security clearance, but it was, I guess, a background check, and then I had to have an escort when I was in certain buildings. My experience with the government was they had created a project that they outsourced to one of the big contracting companies. I don't know which one it was, but it was in the vein of Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, etc. They had then contracted the project out to a university. The university had then contracted that out to a faculty member that they led a research project. So it's probably somebody that had their PhD and worked at the school as someone who publishes papers or something. So then they farmed it out to a grad student, and then they farmed it out to a class that changed every year. And they weren't given they were not given specific details about what the project was for, because it's supposed to be this military project, and there's a certain level of secrecy that's required and whatnot. And what it ended up being was that they re-implemented HTTP and just did a really bad job, because it was farmed out, and it wasn't done well, and it took 2 years to do. And I was at the meeting where they first unveiled it, and it wasn't top secret at that point anymore, because they wanted multiple companies to work on it together to be able to collaborate and blah blah blah. But they basically created their own custom HTTP. It had compression, it had lengths, it worked over UDP and TCP. It had XML was the transfer format. It pulled together some other stupid formats that they had created. Well, I guess I shouldn't say stupid, because some of them were created at a time when standards didn't exist for it, but this was definitely within the realm of things where everything that they needed, there was already a standard for, and by creating their own thing, they just made it worse. And I will say that when I went into that government building, just like every other building, the passwords were on the whiteboards. So I think the difference between a government job and an industry job is actually that in a government job, there's no accountability. In an industry job, if you're not successful, you fail. In a government job, you fail up. If you're not successful, you get promoted. I mean, I didn't personally witness that, but that's kind of the mentality. Things become really far removed, prices skyrocket. And one thing that was really cool about this job, from my perspective, is they wanted something that had never been done before. And I said, well, we'll deliver something that's never been done before. We created basically an offline Google Maps experience in a browser, and it was Firefox. And at the time, being the government, they required Internet Explorer. I said, no, we're going to make this so awesome that when they see it, they're going to get Firefox approved. And that is what happened, because we did some really cool stuff. And this was the early days. It was back before we had all the multimedia APIs and everything that we have now. But we did some really cool stuff. And we provided them, and for the purposes of the demo, there is an OpenStreetMaps that we were able to get some data from. But we also showed them how they could get the data from Google Maps, because they wanted to get data from Google Maps, because Google Maps satellites fly over places that other satellites can't fly, because they're Google satellites, I guess. And so international friendliness or something. But yeah, so we created a really cool thing, and I got some pushback, and they were saying, oh, it has to work in Internet Explorer. And I said, no, it doesn't. Because once they see this, we get to choose what we dictate the rules are, not them. And that was really ballsy and ignorant for somebody that was young and in his 20s. But it was that ballsy ignorance that happened to be correct. And if I wasn't ballsy and ignorant, then I would have done what everybody else did and shipped some crappy product that only half worked for Internet Explorer instead of shipping a Google Maps like target tracking experience in Firefox. Are you saying top secret development rely on CS Major's final projects? Well, it wasn't top secret development, but yes, things go down. The ball gets thrown down a long ways. So I am going to estimate that the contract bid was in the realm of $2 million. And that, I have no basis for that, but I would think that that's probably conservative. When you consider how many times it was subcontracted out and it ended up being done by somebody who was probably being paid less than $20 an hour over the course of 2 years among basically some capstone project students or something. Yeah,